Good morning. Good morning. Can you guys hear my audio okay? Good morning, Night Shadow. Rain Dancer. Good evening for you. BR says returning to Vegas to collect or distribute CSAM. Like, yeah, it's a jump to say that, but when you go through all the information, everything leads to Vegas. You're like, okay, well, this, and that fits, this and that. Okay, now why Vegas? Everything. Every path that I take, it all leads, if the clients are involved, leads to Vegas. So I think it's important that we find out whether or not they drove or they flew. And if they flew, when did they purchase the tickets? Because we know the Anthony Shots account was created, I believe, July of 2016. So I have a feeling if they bought their tickets around that time, that could have been when they planned to meet somebody in Vegas to distribute uh, something like a death caught on film or something really morbid along those lines. Something that is thought of as a myth. These things, if you look them up, like these types of things, it's they say, oh well, it's just a myth, something that doesn't exist. But when you have something so rare, and we know it exists, we saw the Shill Miller case, where he catfished those people in Alaska, convinced them to murder a friend, very similar to the Delphi case. Is it just a coincidence that the Shill Miller guy lived in Indiana? Good to see you, James. Beach Ferry, SP74, 517 Kells. Hey, Jill, good to see you. Hope you're feeling good. Rose Scheid, the homie Grizz. Hope you're doing well, Grizz. Always good to see you. Melissa, Julianne, Jill, Colette, hello. I'm having a great day. Rebecca, Ruckus, good to see you, Ruckus, as always. Phil Bond, good morning. Blood running, good morning. And didn't go to plan. I don't know, Melissa. If they're okay, let's run through this hypothetical here. This is a theory, this is speculation. Let's say around July of 2006, somebody with Las Vegas ties comes to Keegan Klein or one of the Kleins, whatever, and says, "Hey, you guys want to make some real money? I have somebody offering me $100,000 if we can produce them an authentic movie, something authentic." I mean, is that going to motivate these types of people to actually start planning this crime? Think about it. If somebody was to motivate, and this just trying to figure out what the hell would motivate somebody to commit a crime like this. But that's, when you're telling the story and you're trying to piece it all together, that's what comes to mind is at some point, mid 2016, if Vegas plays a part, somebody came up with an idea or motivated these killers. And if Vegas plays a big part of that, I'm thinking that's what it was. Hey, man, we can make some real money if you can provide something authentic. And that's when they start putting together their team. Okay, how are we going to, first of all, we got to lure these people somewhere. Okay, what's a good, where could we do that? What about the Monon Bridge? You know, that would be a good place for them. Okay, how are we going to get them out there? Well, we'll use Kagan's catfish accounts. We'll access his catfish accounts, and then we'll lure somebody out there, and we'll make sure we get it done right before the trip. And maybe they were planning on doing multiple because we have more information about the ski mask incident. And what it seems has happened is law enforcement and investigators, while explaining it to Keegan, they kind of seem because they're really in there freestyling it. You know, they're going with the moment. They're feeling the vibes in the room. They're seeing what Kagan and how he's reacting. So they got to stay with them. They got to stay on top of the information. They got to stay in control of the conversation. So they're saying half truths as well. Keegan's lying in half truths. Well, they're trying to stay on top of this conversation with half truths. You know, they can't take a time out and say, "Oh, let me go get the case file and pull and read it verbatim." No, they're going to throw out whatever details they have on the top of the brain, like, "Oh, you were looking them up, and next thing they're coming home and they see somebody in a ski mask." That's not necessarily what happened, but something very similar. So if they had plans already to get out of there in Vegas, maybe they were trying to get multiple items that they could sell. But honestly, I think that was to tie up loose ends. The only other person that could tie Kagan, let's just put it this way. If Kagan Klein and Anthony Schatz were part of the premeditated murder of Abby and Libby, there really was only a few people that could lead law enforcement back to them directly to say, "Hey, I know them personally." And that would be whoever introduced Libby to Anthony Schatz or knows that Anthony Schatz began communicating with her. Now, to me, it would make sense if you're sitting in a room and you just committed a double murder and you're starting to talk about the possibility of evidence being left. You know, people are going to start asking Kagan questions like, "Hey, man, who knew about this account? Is there any possible way that this will lead back to you?" He's going to say, "Well, um, I know the person that introduced me to Libby when we started talking to her. I know them personally." Now, if Kagan said something like that to a cold-blooded killer, that's going to make him freak out, especially if it's somebody like Richard Allen, who seems to be not only motivated by money, possibly with his answers about watching stocks and things like that. To me, his mind is fixated on income. So I'm going to think it was either money motivated, his first crime. So if he's talking with the Kagan Klein, he just committed a double murder. He's trying to figure out how are they going to tie this to me? And Kagan's like, "Well, I know this person personally." "What do you mean? Is it possible that she knows who you are?" "Well, I mean, there's always that chance." Well, in his mind, he's like, "I got to take her out. If she's the only one that's going to lead back to me, well, yeah, before we go to Vegas, we're going to take her out. We're going to tie up this loose end." But of course, that's just hypothetical. Good morning, Miss Thang. Melissa. Rose, hello. I'm curious if the CPS building was ever properly searched after the murders before being torn down. I hope so, because there was a YouTuber. I can find the video for you, but it's not hard. He's basically unicycling all the way through the Monon High Bridge Trail there, and he's literally trespassing everywhere he goes. I don't think he's aware of it, but I think he even goes way back onto the Weber property and goes into one of their back sheds. But he walks right into the CPS building. He's in there, and it's a small building. And if he could walk into it like that, I mean, who's to say they weren't trying to kidnap the girls and bring them back to that CPS building? Doesn't really make that much sense, but nothing that they did. Killing two girls doesn't make sense. So who knows what the hell was going on? Hey, Peruvian. Carol Murray will listen, but have to drive to Atlanta. Safe travels. Put your seatbelt on. Keep your eyes on the road. Okay, so I just grabbed a handful of random things that I've been throwing around the last couple of days. I figure I'll share it with you guys. It's nothing too significant, just kind of food for thought, really. What's up, Slatherings? Bonnie's asking, why didn't Derek have an occupational license to drive to all the appraisal for picks, and has he written off mileage on taxes? What are you talking about? You're trying to get Derek for tax fraud? Let's try to stay focused here. I wish TK had done. TK did do a lie detector test. He did a lie detector test. He provided blood and hair follicle, or DNA and no blood and hair follicle as well. Him and Kagan. They also interrogated Tony Klein as well. Good morning, Lakeside. Okay, let me see what I grabbed here. Okay. So I was sent this conversation here. I don't know where it's from. It's got a watermark of BOL. You guys know who that is? And I'm sure this sparked because this guy, James Lucas, seems to be the first person who was questioned about the Delphi murders. They brought him in, they took his phone, they didn't give it back to him for the entire day. They took a DNA. He was the first, I think, DNA sample that they took. So we're going to take a quick look at this person. There's no connection. It's just strange. And it makes me curious about all the people early on in the case that they were really interested in. So let's take a look here. This conversation looks like a back and forth. They've blocked out. It might have been a messenger. It says, did you show Annie, and I don't know who Annie is, Annie the video of Lucas? They respond, yes. She thinks a lot of people look, and I don't know if she meant Anna. Maybe she's saying Anna. Yes, thinks a lot of people look like the guy, including him. So even Lucas was like, yeah, I kind of look like that guy. He was one of the first DNA swabs. She knew that. Yeah, I thought he was. Is it true the girls had scarves around their necks? Libby had a scarf, yes, because she had to. Abby had a jumper on with the white collared blouse button up. So this is somebody that must have been actually at the viewings. Let me skip this part here. No, Abby didn't. Oh, does Anna, I think it says Annie though. Annie think it was a stranger to the girls or someone they knew? Also, I'd like to know what you think of all the social media sites Libby was on. Did Abby have a phone with her? This person responds, no, Abby didn't own a phone. She had a tablet at her home. FBI took it the 14th. Libby had a lot of social media and it was open. I can't get to my saved pics right now, but the one on Instagram was when she was 12. I also heard she was on some dating sites. I know they found a lot of child solicitation over this. One is an Anthony Shots on Instagram. His Snapchat was Anthony Shots, but he has cleared it even though he's in trouble. So this is a really, really old conversation that took place with somebody that is obviously in the know and very close to the family. Here is one of the first media reports on Delphi about a person of interest.
6 o'clock starts now.
And we're getting our first look tonight at the remote area where two 13-year-old girls were found murdered. This comes as tips are flooding into the police station for who could be behind the killings of Libby German and Abby Williams. Police are now questioning people about the case just hours after putting out an image of a man that they said they wanted to talk to.
This man was on the same trail around the same time as the 13-year-olds before they went missing. Police say he isn't a suspect, but someone they want to talk to hopefully get more information about what happened to Libby and Abby.
And police are moving fast on leads. Eyewitness News reporter Rich Van Wyk spoke with one of the people questioned by police today, and he joins us now from near the crime scene. Rich?
John, at the crime scene today, we learned just how difficult it was for the killer and their victims to get to this remote area. It's steep, it's treacherous, it's difficult. We also learned more about why police want to talk specifically to one man who was in the same area as these girls, roughly about the time they disappeared. The crime scene is serene and isolated. Hard to reach, hard to leave, making it almost hard to believe such a horrible crime occurred here.
It's just
Hey,
hard to
whistleblower.
comprehend as to what's happened here.
Ron Logan
What's up,
has owned
Cryptex?
and roamed these woods for 50 years. Through the trees, he pointed to the now infamous Monon High Bridge.
At the end of the bridge there is where their last photographs were taken.
By Libby of her friend Abby. The Monday afternoon, they disappeared. They were about half a mile away from where searchers found their bodies. It's a half mile of steep hills, high bluffs, and deep ravines.
No, it's not an easy trip. And I'm quite amazed anybody knows how to get here.
Investigators say they've identified almost everyone in the area when the girls disappeared, except this man, photographed on the same bridge.
Okay, let's go back to that real quick. Now, I want you to pay close attention to what Ron Logan says here. And Ron is a very visual person. When he speaks, you can see his mind actually go to a place. So I'm going to replay this.
No, it's not an easy trip. And I'm quite amazed anybody knows how to get here.
He said, I'm quite amazed anybody knows how to get here. And he kind of wanders off. Now, to me, Ron is thinking about the very short list of people he knows for a fact knows where this area is and that he's given permission to be back here. So it's almost as if he's going through that short list of names going, man, one of those people killed these girls possibly.
Investigators say they've identified almost everyone in the area when the girls disappeared, except this man, photographed on the same bridge the girls visited.
No, they interviewed him.
Since releasing the photo, they've received hundreds of tips.
Did he see somebody else that maybe some of the others didn't see? And so we just basically want to talk to him just to see what information he's got for us.
James Lucas says police also asked to speak with him.
It was scary. I never expected it.
So if you can group up like
Lucas says he was one of the hundreds of searchers. Police asked him a few questions, checked his phone, then let him go.
They said if they need me later, they would get a hold of me.
All while a community is coming to grips.
Okay, so that interview, I'm assuming that's exactly what happened with Richard Allen, right? They took his phone information, they talked with him briefly, and then let him go. I don't even think it was that serious. I think it might have even been on the fly, just kind of like in passing, like, hey, by the way, I wanted to give you my information. I was there that day. This is what I saw. But now, here, we'll finish this this report, and then I'll show you another interesting
young
thing.
kids playing, thinking they're having a wonderful day, Valentine's Day, and ends up in one of the largest tragedies in Carroll County history.
In your backyard?
In my backyard. Yeah, it's a big thought. Not a good one.
Here's a
Yeah, so that's what I get when I hear Ron Logan say they must have been walking with somebody. I mean, how do they know about this place? To me, that's him going, man, one of these people that I've allowed to hunt out here, that have spent time on my land, that I most likely know personally, it's got to be somebody like that or somebody that lives nearby. Seems like Ron Logan was worried about that. Like in his mind, he knows that it has to be a short list. Misunderstood. Good morning. Hey, Mandy. Miss Thang, thank you. Bowl of leaves. Yeah, apparently they were found in like a naturally indented little area, and I could see it very easily. All the leaves just kind of building in that one area. Good morning, hybrid. Heaven sent. Has anyone looked into maybe Richard had access to lots of Sudafed? Maybe he was supplying Sudafed to meth makers out there and someone didn't pay up. Beach Fairy says, I'm surprised they did open caskets. That's what that's referring to. Yeah, I skipped all over that part. But yeah, I can see that. And they kind of made it seem as if Abby had some stuff going on around her neck as well. So I don't know what I think there's a lot we don't know about what really actually happened from the point they went down that hill to the point they were found. There's a lot we don't know. Yeah, I was told the date was very early on. Um, there was something else I wanted to show you. Oh, so you remember the presser where they were like the killer's probably in this room? I did kind of find it strange that Lucas was in there. Now, obviously, the whole town's in there, but I just think it's strange. He's just kind of sitting there by himself. And I'm talking to the killer who may be in this room. And then you got this guy who's just sitting there all alone. Obviously, it means nothing, but it's still interesting, right? Heaven Sent says, I used to live out there and ran with DG, and let me tell you, things were wild and crazy out there. Got out in 2014 because I needed to get sober. Thank God I did. Yeah, and a lot of his problems happened way back then in 2014. Peruvian, I can't get past the fact that he was released into the public after an abundance of circumstantial evidence and failed polygraph. It would be incredible if he stymied. Sorry, I don't know how to read that word. Hey, EL, good to see you. Thank you, Miss Thang. Hey, Kimmy. Kimmy saying, listening while working. Hope everyone is having a great day. Mine is super good. Awesome. Murderess in my fam's case just breached her 2.7 million bond and is back in prison. Good. That's a good point. Slathering says they might have had hundreds of people that say, I've heard this or that. But if someone says, I was there, yeah. I mean, you don't have many names to remember, but the one name that you should remember is the guy that said he was there. Not only did he say he was there, but at the time the girls went missing. Forget what the guy was wearing, right? You know, that's a whole nother point when they start flashing his image all over the media and this conservation officer's not coming forward. There's something we don't know about that story. Either it's a half truth to protect a witness and the bloodlust just went running with it. They're trying to protect this guy because I don't know, maybe this is pretty embarrassing. It could ruin his career, maybe his life if people have his name. I mean, that's awful. You have a 6-year investigation that cost the state millions, and the trauma that these families went through, all because you're an idiot. Hey, Linda. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're having a successful battle. Hope you're winning that fight. It's good to see you. No Man says, yes, in no way he would give up Garrett Kurtz. He was like a son to him. See, and I don't know the relationship. I know that he's close with his dad, and we hear what Kurtz told Open Secrets. But like I said, he's a liar, just like Keegan's a liar. It's hard to take anything that they say seriously. Like, we want to listen, but I think we want to focus on the actual facts more than what these known liars say. We definitely want to listen because everything is usually a half truth anyway. So at least we're getting half of the story. Good morning, CJK. Shay Watson with the super chat. Hi, been away, missed everyone. Good to be back. Always good to see you, Shay. Thanks for all your support. Mark Johnson says, out of curiosity, not trying to be personal, have you been to Delphi yet? After I went, it changed my whole perspective. No, I have not been to Delphi. I do plan on going. Yeah, I live in Arizona, so in order for me to go, it's going to turn into this huge thing because we have family real close by out there in Illinois. So it would have to be like a double trip. It would be really a trip to Chicago and then me sneaking away. What's up, Bossy? Oh, and I figured we could talk a little bit about the Stevenson case again. So instead of talking about the stuff where they mentioned the Delphi case, I went and grabbed the two news clips that they had where it has nothing to do with Delphi, and they're just talking about this crazy crime scene and how strange it was. So I wanted to share that with you. I thought it'd be a good conversation starter.
Couple, it's been nearly a decade since Bill and Peggy Stevenson were murdered inside their home in Boone County.
A detective working the couple's case is revealing a new information about the investigation.
Jessica Schmidt joins us live with where things stand right now. This is a story you will see only right here on Fox 19 Now.
Yeah, Robin, Amber, so Sunday actually marks 10 years since the Stevensons were murdered in the Boone County area. And I spoke with the detective who has handled the case tonight, and that detective told me it's not a cold case, even though time has passed. In fact, he actually says they have some solid leads that they got recently that they are continuing to follow up on.
10 years is long enough.
It's been a decade full of painful moments, cherished memories, and unanswered questions for the family of Bill and Peggy Stevenson.
They were open and friendly with everybody they met. They didn't meet a stranger.
The Boone County couple died in May 2011 when they were brutally murdered inside their Florence home. The 74-year-olds were well known and well liked for their work in Christian ministry.
They were very involved with the church that they went to for years. Dad was a deacon, mom played the organ.
Although time has passed, Detective Coy Cox says he and his partner are following up on 3 solid leads received within the past year. One of those tips led them to a truck driver, a man who used to live in northern Kentucky but moved to California. Knowing Bill worked with a chapel ministry at a truck stop, they tracked that trucker down.
We have collected DNA from him, and that's been submitted to the state.
Although the crime scene was complex because something had been moved and then staged in each room, Cox says they do have evidence. And at this point, they can't rule out that more than one person may have been involved.
Who could do this to them? Why them?
We have a pretty good idea of the persons that we are interested in.
Detectives aren't revealing possible motives, but Beth says she and her 2 brothers will never understand how someone could take their parents' lives so senselessly in such a horrific way.
I think it's one of the hardest things that you can go through as a family. It's a nightmare that has gone on for 10 years.
They deserve an answer. I wish we could give them one, and hopefully soon we can.
Now, Detective Cox says he isn't sure exactly when they will get those DNA test results back, but did say it probably will take some time. Of course, we'll keep you posted on those. We also know tonight there is a $50,000 reward.
Right, I have one more on the Stevenson case here.
Couple described as caring and giving, people of God spreading the word of the Lord. So who would want them dead?
May 29, 2011, which was 7 years ago. That crime scene, of all the crime scenes I've been on, was the most unique by far.
Boone County Detective Coy Cox says this is an old case.
Man, this really sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
And not a cold case, because he carries it with him every day.
I'm not a young guy, and I've made the comment to many people.
They said they tracked some trucker to California. Didn't Kagan Klein have connections to California as well? I'm not saying that has anything to do. I'm just pointing it out. He said he had a California phone number and that he would travel from Las Vegas to California. So maybe that was a meeting point. I don't, most likely not. I'm just throwing out that connection.
People that the day this case is solved, I'll retire the next day. So yes, it would mean a lot.
7 years ago this month, Bill
reminds me a lot. He kind of plays the Doug Carter role in this case. I get Doug Carter vibes from Coy.
Bill and Peggy Stevenson were found murdered in their Florence, Kentucky home. Years earlier, WLWT actually did a story on Bill in 2000. He was a deacon at a local church and oversaw the Truckers' Chapel on Kentucky 18, sharing his faith.
Yeah, who's this other guy with him? Like, hopefully they question all these people.
With men and women who spend most of their lives away from home and on the road.
Breaker 19. Hey guys, this is Truckers Christian Chapel. We're going to have church service in here if you want to come on in and join us.
11 years after we shared this story on our news, Bill and his wife were brutally killed. Cause of death, stabbing, and blunt force trauma. But the crime scene is something
Stabbing and blunt force trauma. This case is almost identical to Delphi. From what I understand, that's exactly what happened in the Delphi case. Stabbing and blunt force trauma.
Investigators and federal experts are still scratching their heads about.
There were symbols. There were items.
You notice that when they did the Delphi connection coverage of this case, saying, hey, we went out to Delphi and we know Alex tipped in some things and they had some items that they were interested. You notice that during that whole conversation, they didn't mention symbols. They didn't mention the Wiccan religion. But early on in the Stevenson case, they mentioned that they went and questioned people who were involved in the Wiccan religion. and they used the word symbols a lot when they were describing the crime scene. But when they transitioned over into talking about Delphi and their involvement in that, they never mentioned symbols. So I'm thinking that that might be something that was present in the Delphi crime scene, possibly maybe a Wiccan star or something along those lines.
Items that were used at the scene to indicate strong feelings or opinions about the victims, Bill and Peggy.
Detective Cox says the evidence proves the killer or killers were either with the bodies for several hours or came back to the home long after the murders. No eyewitnesses, no murder weapon found. The home was cleaned, the bodies staged in a certain way, littered with odd items. Cox won't call it a satanic ritual or sacrifice, but he does believe the killer was trying to communicate something. So tonight, the lead detective wants you, the person who did this, to get in touch anonymously, perhaps a letter with no return address, or a disposable burner cell phone. However you do it, Detective Cox is ready for you to reach out.
I realize that you're not going to come and sit down and say, hey, I did this, let me tell you what I did. But the why, I think, would be part of what you want us to know, part of the message that you were trying to get to us. And I would ask you to communicate. Well, we'll work with you. I'll communicate back to you in some kind of social form.
The tips keep coming in. Cox and fellow investigators have interviewed hundreds of people of interest. He says circumstantial evidence has narrowed down the search.
We do have, I'm going to say individuals, plural, at this time, that we have been keeping tabs on for 7 years.
Cox says he and his team are tightening the circle, constantly chatting with folks who have had dealings with these people of interest. He says someday that mistake will be made, and he'll get to tell Bill and Peggy's family a killer has been caught.
It may not be today, it may not be next month, may not be next year, maybe 10 years down the road, but this case will be solved.
Yeah, so he said symbols there. So let's take a look. This is from Crime Scene Staging and Alterations, the CSI Effect on Criminal Investigations. This is an older book from 2007. It's by Vernon J. Geberth. But it's very interesting, and I've read this in multiple places. I've read this in an FBI, in the FBI handbook, and in a couple bulletins. And I'll read it here for you. Staging. A scene occurs when the perpetrator purposely alters the crime scene to mislead the authorities and or redirect the investigation. Staging is a conscious criminal action on the part of the offender to thwart an investigation. The term staging should not be used to describe the actions of surviving family members who cover or redress a loved one who is found nude or has died in an embarrassing situation. These activities are certainly understandable considering the shock experienced by a relative who encounters the sudden and violent death of a loved one. In my experience investigating suspicious deaths, I have oftentimes had a gut feeling that something was amiss. Practically speaking, if you have a gut feeling that something is wrong, then guess what? Something is wrong. Actually, that gut feeling is your subconscious reaction to the presentation, which should alert you to the possibility that things are not always what they appear to be. This position is consistent with equivocal death investigations. In staged crime scenes, however, the presentation of the homicide victim and the manipulation of the crime scene by a clever offender could make the death appear to be a suicide. I have personally investigated many such cases, and the truth of the matter is that initially the case did look like self-inflicted. I don't know. I think I can only use that word one time. Well, I actually have, let's look at one of the the news reports on the possible connection to the Stevenson case in Delphi. And they don't talk about anything like that. They don't bring up any of that information. Well, actually, because of time, we're going to have to keep going. But if you guys want to look it up, it's readily available. Those videos are there. Just Google them. But they don't mention a lot of the details that they were willing to mention early on. And I think their interest in the Delphi case may kind of reveal some of the hidden aspects of the Delphi case.
No, I mean, the crime scene was physically strange, but that's for the state police to decide what to release and not release. I've said that before. It's very odd.
Working for you tonight, we took those questions directly to the prosecutor.
My health is fine. My marriage is fine. My family's fine. I'm not in any trouble with anybody to the best of my knowledge.
But I'm stepping down from the two largest cases in my career.
Carroll County Prosecutor Rob Ives says it was a variety of personal reasons that he made the decision that he'll be stepping down at the end of next month. Ives was first appointed prosecutor in 1987. He went through a volley of election wins and losses over the years, but he's been serving as Carroll County's prosecutor for the last 7 years. He says the Flora fire and the murders of Abby and Libby have been the worst cases of his career.
For both of them to have happened in basically the last year is just horrendous.
And while some have accused investigators of handling the cases differently, I've said that is simply not the case.
In the case of the murder of Abby and Libby, there's a photograph and there's a recording. And so the Indiana State Police held a press conference because we want everybody to see that. If we had anything similar to release with regard to Galen's children, Galen Rose, we would absolutely.
And not to mention they had the dash cam footage that wasn't released for whatever reason. They have a 911 call, probably multiple. You see those people that are on the phones out in front of the house while it burns. Yeah, they have those 911 calls. Hopefully they have all those calls, whoever they're talking to.
Have released that, and we'd had the press conference. It isn't because of any lack of effort there, and I'm very frustrated by people who think there is.
While Ives won't go into specifics on the reasons why he's stepping down, he says he believes right now is the best time to retire because no one.
He says, I'm really frustrated by people saying that they're not focused in on the crime of what happened in Flora. But I'm stepping down less than a year from that crime. Like, what a hypocrite.
Has been charged in either case. Now, the next prosecutor will be decided by the Republican caucus here in Carroll County. That person will serve right here at the Carroll County Courthouse. Reporting in Delphi tonight, I'm Call 6 Investigates, Paris Lubell.
Wow. That's all I got to say about that guy.
So I found this website.
Welcome in Natasha Richardson, Ray Jones, Cynthia. Who'd I miss? Did I get you, Olivia? Lisa. Slathering says, we don't really know what they've spent the last 6 years on. It could be deep into something. Well, the family did mention when they brought up the Anthony Schott stuff that they were kind of asked to be patient about some things. So I wonder if this whole CSAM ring and all of that, because in Kagan's transcript, he straight up says, hey, well, why'd you guys, if it's such a big deal, why'd you let me go free for 3 years? And the very next sentence from investigators is, man, we found the largest CSAM ring from your devices. Like, this investigation is huge. Like, you have no clue what you're part of. So if they're willing to use the FBI to watch Kagan Klein while he's doing his thing in Vegas, they're obviously doing it for a reason. They're trying to find somebody.
And everything and all of it. We're looking at all of it. We said when this happened we were going to start all over.
So you never cleared him, Mr. Logan.
We haven't cleared anybody.
That freaking look at this look on his face. There's a meme. What's up, Puri? Later, Natasha. Replay. What's up, Frank? Slathering is saying, I'm just trying really hard to give law enforcement the benefit of the doubt. Me too. But at what point do you stop doing that? I mean, are you going to be like on your deathbed? Like, I know law enforcement one day will release the information for you guys, and then you got to go. Like 6 years is long enough, man. You got a guy in custody and you're telling me you still can't give us information? Oh, it's because it's an open investigation and other people are involved. Okay, well, last time you told us this, you told the town of Delphi not to worry while they were getting their Gatorade from the killer. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my medication here from a double murderer while his face is next to the wanted poster. And now you're going to tell us that there are other people involved. If I lived in Delphi, I'd be terrified. It could be your father they're talking about. I mean, that poor girl who's taking photos on the bridge. I mean, she had no clue what the hell was going on. So if there's other people involved, I mean, you guys better do something. If that was my town, I wouldn't just sit around and let that shit happen. So there has to be some kind of back room communication between these investigators and the family explaining, hey, look, this is what we're dealing with. We understand if you want to proceed this way, but we're dealing with something much bigger than what happened. This case is evolving. We're just asking for you to be patient. If they did something like that, which I hope they did, and that's why I try to keep my mouth shut, and I might poke fun at Doug every once in a while because he is kind of a strange cat. But, that's all it'll be for now. Yeah, that's not cool. Slathering says, I doubt it has anything to do with anything, but there are some things related to the word Delphi. Yeah, it seems like it could be a very occultic word, with the history of the actual place Delphi, with the Python and all that weird, I don't know, what would you call that? Mythology? Yeah, there you go. Greek mythology. Yeah, and the thing about, and I know what you're saying, Slay the Rings, is somebody that's leaving symbols and staging crime scenes and killing people on the 13th at 3 o'clock these occult type of people, they're into that urban dictionary stuff and some Greek mythology. I'm sure that's the kind of stuff that they're into. These occult, these Aleister Crowley types. That might even play into the power part. So I wonder what symbols were left. Hopefully Richard Allen won't keep his mouth shut. He needs to start talking. It'll make his life a lot easier. I mean, just let it out. Free yourself. Hey, what's up, Kevin? And the fact that Richard Allen isn't speaking and that his defense hasn't convinced him to make a deal after discovery really makes me worried that they didn't find as much as I hope they would have found in that search or, during their investigation after the search. And I guess Richard Allen could still be in the process of maybe talking right now. I don't know. It's just strange to think that if they had DNA or trophies or maybe DNA on something that was found at Richard Allen's, and if the defense knew that, I mean, you think they would want to go public, and I don't know what would a defense strategy be for that? You think you'd be pleading for mercy, not saying, "Oh, I'm innocent," because that's just going to make it worse on you if they have solid evidence. So not only are you guilty, you have no remorse. Jill says Greek mythology. Thank you. Drops of Jupiter. Has anybody looked into the geocaching theory? Yeah, that's a very good theory because that theory involves online as well. You can track people online. You could, once you get to the geocache, you can see who's been there. I think there's websites where you can communicate with other people that have been to that geocache site. I think there were multiple geocache locations at that trail. So yeah, definitely a great theory. Go ahead and block her. Yeah, we're not doing that here. We made it out the slums. You know what I'm saying? We made it out the Delphi streets. We ain't going back. Kimmy says, I don't think Delphi connected to the occult, just some sick, twisted mind, or maybe minds. I don't know. There's something strange with it being midday on the 13th at 3 p.m. Like, these are all occult numerology. Like, I could totally see some idiot, some Satan worshiper, like, yeah, I'll do it. Let's do it. Or just coming up with some stupid plan like that. We got to do it at this time and this, and that, all twacked out on some meth or some shit. Ivy says, Sleuth, maybe because it's personal and the target is the family or families, so not a serial killer or killers that would be the only reason why residents don't need to worry. The part that really bothers me is that the DNA that was found at the crime scene, they couldn't match it to anything. So to me, this is somebody, if they commit crimes, it's almost like they have access to the underworld, like the drugs, the gangs, just people that just know they're going to end up in jail eventually, and they just act a certain way. But let's say this certain somebody was a family man, a pillar in his community, like a BTK type. I'm not saying he's a serial killer who's going to bind and torture. I'm just saying he can hide, a real chameleon. You know, he can wear that camouflage. So he's able to use all these idiots that are all drugged out, desperate, you know, family issues, and he can manipulate them. You know, get them to do certain things, and then he just shows up, you know, while they've already done all the heavy lifting, and comes in and does all this weird shit. And then he just leaves back to his teaching job, or his coaching job, or maybe he teaches band at the local high school. You know what I mean? Who knows? Why is his DNA not in the database? To me, that's two things. It's either some really young person, and that's where I came up with the mean teens theory, because it does happen. They're too young for their DNA to be in the database, or they're just really smart and they get away with their crimes, or it was a first offense. And we thought that about Richard Allen, but you think if his DNA was found all over that crime scene, they'd be yelling it from the rooftops. Yeah, that's right, Glitter. Well, it all becomes part of a fantasy. You gotta make sure you get out of your brain. Stop listening to your thoughts every once in a while. And just kind of observe with your eyes and listen with your ears. Yeah, Lupercalia. You know what? They actually, one year in Scottsdale, Arizona, I think it was 2015, they actually celebrated Lupercalia. And they did it from the 13th to the 15th. It was 2 days. They had to fight, you know, and I agree that they have their right to do that, because this is America. We have religious freedom. But you got to think somebody radical, you have this whole group that are fighting to get this Lupercalia on February 13th to the 15th, and they celebrated it. They ran wild in the streets, right? All these godless heathens, so to speak, running around, basically turning an entire city street into a satanic ritual. So if you got people motivated to do that, why not over here in Delphi? Maybe it was ritualistic. I just feel like we don't know a whole lot about the suspect. Natasha says, I truly believe he's guilty, not sure he'll confess. Yeah, he might just remain quiet the entire time. Same with Koberger. What the hell is he up to? He's like laying back until he's like, I reserve the right to say when and if I'm guilty or not. Do we know if Richard Allen has been compelled to give his DNA? I don't think he would have a choice at this point. And I don't think they would have a problem being able to, you know, get it from his home. Mandy, good to see you. 3 p.m. is the time Jesus was believed to be sacrificed. And I think 3 a.m. is like the witching hour or something like that. Something to do with 3. And I'm sure that goes back to numerology. Glitterbean, yeah, it's a good theory. I mean, you wonder how they were tracked, why it was the girls. You know, why did it end up being a situation where somebody's trying to force them down a hill on the end of a secluded bridge? You know, it makes you wonder what was going on out there. Who goes out there? Who frequents that area? Oh, well, there's geocaching. Yeah, I think True Crime Jesus was the first person who brought that theory to my attention. I know it was out there previous once that interview came out with Renner. He talked to Kelsey and she mentioned that they were out there geocaching. And I think that's what spawned the theory, people using that information. Hybrid says, I was 100% sold on the geocache theory for a long time. Well, your gut was probably telling you there's something going on online. Like these girls are being stalked somehow, where this perpetrator is able to view them and, hide in plain sight, and they're not able to even know he's there. It's a good theory. To me, a lot of old theories kind of are interesting again, considering that Kagan Klein and all that might not have anything to do with it. I personally think that it does, a little more so than I think it doesn't. But I know that there's nothing really concrete. There's no smoking gun there. All of the information, yes, it pancakes, but those pancakes aren't made with flour. They're made with speculation. So we ain't eating those. But we're going to talk about it, and we're going to, because all of the crazy stuff we talked about early on, now it's the important stuff. Wise men have been made become fools, basically. And then it'll probably go back the other way when it's all said and done. This case has just been like a strange roller coaster.
So as of the facts that we have collected at this point in time, we have not tied it to any other known homicides.
Keep in mind that there the likeliness, the possibility of more than one person. We're not saying that the voice that you heard is the same as this person here.
By city building. We are releasing additional portions of the audio recording from that day. Please keep in mind, the person talking is one person and is the person on the bridge with the girls.
So why were they so confused? When the crime first happened, they had their first presser burst and said, "We're not saying this is the same person." So why didn't they know? What's up, Courtney? Natasha says, so you're saying Alan is innocent? No, I don't think Alan is innocent. I think he could be the sole killer of this crime. Cut out Kagan Klein, cut out Ron Logan. We could just have this sick individual, and we'll learn more about it, what happened. But I think whatever was between the weeks leading up to the murders. My only thing is, if you lay out all the evidence, you look at the PCA, you look at what was found with Kagan Klein, the Anthony shots, if you have it all laid out on your table, it looks like a huge conspiracy, and it leads right back to Klein. The only thing that keeps me from going all in on that and putting all my chips in is there's no smoking gun that connects Alan to the Kleins. And if there is any connection, it's most likely going to be to Kagan's father. I mean, it just makes sense. The ages, unless somehow, Richard Allen and Kagan Klein somehow connected, which is also possible. But we're just talking about what's more likely. But yeah, I definitely believe he is the guy on the bridge, 99.9% sure. And also because he puts himself there. Thank you, Purdue. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here in about 5 to 10 minutes. If you have any questions or if you want to comment on anything, now is the time. Please hit the thumbs up. And if you're part of the replay crew, I'll get back to the comments. So go ahead and drop a comment and we could chop it up there. Kimmy's asking, didn't the Allens own some rental property in Peru? Not that I know of, but their mother lives in Peru, Kathy's mother. And I believe from the information that I've gathered, she was in Peru during the time of the murders from like I think September of 2016 to maybe even the end of February, something along those lines. So that's very interesting because that kind of puts, and like I said, this is confirmation bias at its finest. You know, this is, and you got to admit it, but that's because they already have the person in jail. So there is some confirmation there, right? Not 100%, but you do have some confirmation that Richard Allen is the suspect. He's in jail. They have evidence on him. They plan to convict him. So we have some confirmation. So I think we can be biased towards that. Now it's interesting, but it is confirmation bias for us to go out and look specifically for a connection to, let's say, Richard Allen and a Tony Klein. You know, but once that connection is made, it becomes very, 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 very interesting. It went from very interesting, and then it went to very, very, very interesting. Yeah, that's the part that gets me, Purdue. And that's what leads me back to Vegas. Why are you guys going to Vegas? Why are you connected to this crime? Why are you meeting people on Craigslist with a burner phone and then saying that you're trying to buy a huge amount of drugs for your drug dealer friend? Like, nobody buys drugs on Craigslist. So that stuff just doesn't make any sense. And why are you motivated to commit this crime in the middle of the day after passing all of these potential witnesses? I don't know. Like, whoever committed the crime seems highly motivated. They decided, on one hand, they were like, I'm motivated. How motivated? In the other hand, they're saying, well, it is worth the risk. So whatever the motivation is, it definitely outweighed the risk in these people's minds. Now, what was that? Usually to a drug dealer, that could be a huge amount, a big stash, maybe somebody who's really hurting bad or was actually shown the money. Yeah, money's been a motivator in a lot of these types of crimes throughout history. But also you have passion, crime of passion. But it could have just been a sexual assault gone wrong. But in my personal opinion, in my extensive amateur investigation into this crime, I'm seeing a pretty large conspiracy between an unknown party who created the motivation for this crime, and then a group of individuals that planned it out and targeted maybe multiple people, but focused in on Abby and Libby. I think specifically Libby because of her social media being completely wide open. You know, it was wide open for, it was kind of like it had a beacon, really, you know. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times we don't learn until something really horrible happens. Kind of like saying, oh, we shouldn't let our kids go out to those trails, which is complete bullshit. You know, we can't let monsters dictate how we live our lives. But what we can do is learn from it and try to do better next time, you know, if we can. Yeah, says it's like law enforcement was releasing info to confuse the public and then ask for the public's help. Yeah, they don't care about the public. They care about justice. They care about their investigation. They care about getting their man. And if they need to use the public, they will. And if they need to pull them this way and then pull them back that way, they will. And they won't come back and clear it up. Because sometimes they're talking specifically to a suspect. They're talking specifically to a profile of a suspect. They may even be talking to potential witnesses, family members. They really don't care about the public. Now, if the public can help in some way, they want to make sure they're asking for that. But usually they're talking to specific people. Slathering says Richard Allen might not be talking because he has a family he's worried about, but I don't know. They could be in danger for all we know. Yeah, I believe they could be. I mean, for all we know, Richard Allen and Keegan Klein are going to be quiet about it. Maybe it was just them. Maybe it wasn't Keegan Klein. Maybe it wasn't even Richard Allen. They're going to have a hard time in court if they don't have more information. And if they're going to continue going around saying others are involved, that means that it kind of makes it look less like him. So I really hope that they can get whoever these other people are involved and get the cuffs on them. Get their names out there. Get this all, get this case finalized so that town can get back to normal. I agree. Yeah. A lot we don't know. And talk of the biggest CSAM ring in Indiana's history makes you, man, like, what does that all mean? What does that entail? Are you talking about politicians? Are you talking just the vast numbers involved? Are you talking about did they open up shop? Was Keegan just a customer? Was he a customer and somebody who was selling CSAM? What's the extent of this online ring? And does it go over Indiana state lines? Is this something national? Like, is this something? At some point, we need answers on that from law enforcement. You said you uncovered the largest CSAM ring in Indiana history. We need to know more about that. If I lived in Indiana, I'd be yelling that from the top of my lungs. Like, what have you done about this? What have you done and what do you plan to do? Because that's disgusting. You're trying to tell me that there's more of these Keegan Kleins running around these small towns? Then something like Delphi is going to happen again if they don't stop that. Kay says, still bothers me the way Richard Allen was taken into custody. He seems so careless and reckless for someone who they thought they finally caught after 6 years. He could have offed himself for family and not shown up. Yeah, it's a good point. Almost as if they've been watching him for some time. Why change now? We've been watching you this entire time and not doing anything. What's the difference now? All right. We'll do two more comments. This one's from Slathering. The conservation officer not coming forward and asking what the fuck, and law enforcement not wanting to specifically say he's BG. And something else I can't say makes me believe Richard Allen isn't BG, but was likely there. Well, I mean, he says he was on the bridge. The bridge guy looks like Richard Allen. He says he was wearing a blue or dark coat, blue jeans. It's obviously him. But what's his extent of the crime? And as far as the conservation officer coming forward, maybe the fact, to me, it seems like Richard Allen saved his own ass. By him coming forward, he nullified, in my opinion, all of the information they had on him. So if he didn't come forward, you got this lone man wearing a blue jacket, blue jeans, about 5'8", Maybe, maybe not. You know, he's not that tall. Okay. And then you do your little investigation and you find out, like, hey, well, Richard Allen was on those trails and he was also on that bridge. And they come and they ask his family, hey, you know, was he there that day? Yeah, he was on the trails that day. Boom. That would have been enough for them to search his home, compare the bullet, and put us where we are now, but 6 years prior. You know, they would have had this where we are now just days after the crime. But instead, you had Richard Allen come forward and he nullified everything. He said, yeah, I was there. I saw those 3 girls. Yep, I saw that other girl too. And I parked by some weird building. No big deal. I was just out there checking out my phone. Yeah, I had my head down. No biggie. I was looking at my phone. I was, you know, checking out the stocks. And yep, I went out on the bridge, checking out some fish, you know. That's everything that the witnesses would have said, right? Now, the only good that these witnesses are going to provide to the trial, I think, is his demeanor. Like, what was he doing? Is that the guy you saw? Yeah, that's definitely him. Well, how was he acting? I know he looked really mad. I said hi to him and he didn't say hi back. So they're not there to say Richard Allen is the killer. They're there to say how he was acting, to paint a picture. You know, and the picture is he has his head down, he's overdressed during what was hot, you know, for that time of year that day, wearing too much clothes, head down, lower face slightly covered, acting angry. That's going to paint a picture to a jury. So why was an angry Richard Allen there at the time the girls went missing, out on the bridge, and then now his bullet is found at the crime scene? Like, dude, you're screwed. Just with that, you could go down. Now imagine if they have some weird shit they found during the search. Like, that's a slam dunk. All right, guys, that is all the time I have. I really appreciate you hanging out with me this morning. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. If you could, hit the like button on the way out. And if you do drop a comment, I will get back to you, I promise. But on that note, enjoy your Tuesday. Peace out.